The NBA draft is 2 weeks from today, and as always, there are guaranteed to be surprises. My question, who's going to be drafted higher than projected?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Wednesday. Hope you had a good lunch or are going to have a good lunch soon. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks so much for being here with us. We want to remind you, you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all you everydayers and all the great members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Joining me on the show today, it's our good buddy Leif Thulin. I think is probably still recovering from Sunday's men's final of the French Open, where Leif is always locked in on all the great tennis that's happening. One of the most epic tennis matches we've seen in a good long while. Coming up on the show today, here's what Leif and I are talking about. 2 weeks from today is the NBA draft. So I've asked Leif to come up with two players he thinks are kind of undervalued and two players he thinks are overvalued. Who should go higher than most people are thinking and who should go lower than most people are thinking. Also, we got news yesterday, Tuesday, that we're going to have the first Dickie V Invitational. Pretty cool. It was announced on his birthday. Neat stuff. Another highlight game on week 1 of the season. That's good. And then the NCAA announced some rule changes yesterday that should, or they intend to at least, help the game go more swimmingly because they're getting rid of a whole bunch of out-of-bounds calls. We'll unpack that if that's going far enough. So, Leif, let's get into some NBA draft stuff, my man. First off, let's go. Who do you think that NBA draft experts are too high on? Who do you think should maybe go a little bit lower than you're seeing them in mock drafts?
Yeah, see, this is the interesting part of the realm of like watching tons of college basketball, formulating my opinions by watching those games, and then kind of being in the NBA draft realm. And
right.
The boards seem to have players really high or really low that the draft, my anticipation is that they're not going to be there. So it really depends who you're looking at. So I could say someone and you'd be like, oh, he's a lottery guy. And then I think he's in the 20s because we look at different boards. So
right.
I'll preface it with that. I think there are a lot of guys that you can have a great stretch of basketball during the season. So one guy I think is going to go. I got confused at this point. Did you ask for someone who's going higher or
yes,
lower?
Sorry. I went around the mulberry brush. Somebody who you think will go or should go lower than you're seeing him mocked.
Yeah. So that guy that got a green room invite that shocked me was Asa Newell. And I've seen him mocked as low as mid-20s, and that seems reasonable, but a green room invite would indicate that you have a good chance to be a lottery pick. So that would be one that stood out to me as the most unique green room invite. And then I think there's going to be some players that I actually think are pretty good, like Liam McNeely, that I've seen as high as like 12 on a board, but the mocks I've seen recently have him in the 20s, and I would pick him higher than that. But I think where he's mocked on some boards, he's going to go far lower than. But that one's kind of the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But Asa Newell will be my answer to that first one. The green room invite seemed a little strange to me for him because I hadn't heard any buzz about him for a couple months, and all of a sudden, like he's in the 20s and all the mocks, and all of a sudden he's got a green room invite. So who knows?
Do you think? And this is wild to try and project, but as we sit here, a fortnight out, a Wimbledon's length out, Leif, do you think that Asa Newell is the last guy sitting in the green room on draft night?
That's been invited thus far, yes. I think there's a world where they invite someone else that may be lower. Another player that's interesting to me is Drake Powell. I think could be a green room invite that we thought was a second rounder for much of the season, but like he has crazy traits, and so he could rise up the board. In my opinion, he's going to be gone by 22, 25, somewhere around that. But I've seen a mock where he was number 12, and then I've seen a mock where he's in the 30s. So once again, it depends the mock there. But so if I were looking at a board and saying like, this is a guy who I think has a crazy range, so therefore if you see one of those, Those are two of the guys that stand out to me. Some highly touted high school prospects that had mercurial seasons. They had good moments, they had bad moments, and so those are the guys that have stood out to me with the widest ranges.
Yeah, Drake Powell, man, his range is I'm with you. I've seen it all over the place. Late lottery all the way into the second round. And part of it with Drake Powell is I think so much of his season for North Carolina this year was he's not just like that pure scorer. A lot of what he brings is, a vast array of different capabilities, and some of it is still projection rather than what we actually saw in Chapel Hill this year. Leif, do you think all of that kind of plays into why there's such a wide array?
I mean, I like Drake Powell because he's a fantastic athlete and he played a role. Like, he was willing to take the role that he'll probably play at the next level in a college. And I think that takes some humility, and you just don't see too many people who move like Drake Powell does. Yeah. So I would say that my gut is he's going to go in the top 25, and I wouldn't be stunned if he gets green room invite. But, I mean, there's not that many teams that are willing to bank on that little production. Yeah. Especially from a guy who was ranked as highly as he was. And it wasn't like the team was that excellent. Like, North Carolina squeaked into the tournament. So I think there's going to be some teams that are big fans of him, and there's some that will happily pass.
In some ways, Rutgers with Dylan and Ace kind of saved North Carolina from being, hey, you had 2 5-stars. What happened? And so Rutgers kind of takes the cake on that. Leif, let's look at the other side of it. Again, as you've well caveated here, different mock drafts are all over the place, but who is maybe somebody that you've seen low, or a couple guys you've seen lower, maybe second rounders or not drafted, that you think should go higher than where you typically are seeing them?
I'm going to go with Cam Jones as one that I think is routinely in the mid-second rounds, and I think he's a first-round talent. I thought last year if he had come out, he could have been drafted. And he goes into Marquette, and for much of the season, he was the best guard in college basketball. Yeah. Like, I think there's a real argument that if you go regular season for regular season, you take out Walter Clayton's heroics of March Madness, fair, that he was the best guard in college basketball. And I think that he can score the ball. He demonstrated playmaking ability, gets to the rim at will, is a knockdown shooter when he has played away from the ball. I've always loved Cam Jones. You know that. The everydayers listening to this know that. But I think that he's a guy that's picked in the 35, 40 range and easily could be picked higher than that and produce at a level that is requisite with someone picked like 20, 30 spots higher than him.
Yeah. And, you said first round talent. I think he's also got first round size, and that's something, sometimes you'll see a guy with first round talent, but maybe I'll call it second round size. But that's not something that would hold him back either. I think Cam is good in that regard. Leif, anybody else that you would put in that vein that you think should maybe be drafted higher than you're routinely seeing them?
I think there's a world in which you look at a mock and you say Jager Demen drafted in the mid-20s, and it's likely he'll end up going in the lottery because he's 6'9", and his college season wasn't that great because he had ball handling issues. He was hurried up by a lot of players, but at the same time, you just don't get 6'9" great passer very frequently. So if you find a mock with him at 10, I think it's too high. It's too rich for my blood. But if you find him at 25, which I've seen on some, I'd imagine he's going to go in the tail end of the lottery. So once again, there's going to be a couple, and then another one, like it's the Drake Powell. I've seen him as low as 40, and I think he's going to go in the 20s. So yeah, there's a lot of players like that where their ranges are fairly vast, and I think that it really is. Are you listening to what the boards that are popularized say, or are kind of like the rumors that are starting to be smoky and circulate from teams and or people in the know?
Yeah, it's always interesting on draft night to see who rockets up the boards or tumbles dramatically. And is that I'm always curious to see who is that last person left in the green room and how do they handle it, right? Like, that's always an interesting thing to me. All right, Leif, we got some great news yesterday. It was Dickie V's birthday. ESPN announces they're going to have the Dickie V Invitational. And best of all, that gives us yet another high-level game for week 1 of the college basketball season. And that's what we beg for, and that's what we're getting. We'll talk about that in just a second. right after I tell you about Gametime. Y'all, there's nothing like the NBA playoffs, and specifically right now, the NBA finals. The intensity, all the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds. It's the kind of atmosphere that you have to experience live. And boy, this year's matchups have delivered in a big way. And so if you want in, Gametime makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games like tonight. Prices on the app actually drop the closer it gets to tip off, and with killer last minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Gametime is a total game changer. I love that I can see the exact view from your seat before you buy your tickets, no surprises at all. The app, it makes it ridiculously easy to get your purchases in as little as 2 taps and you're done. With the Gametime guarantee, you know you're going to get the best deal. And if you do find a better price in the same row and section, they're going to credit you 110% of the difference. So tonight, Game 3 at Gainbridge in Indy, you can get in the door for $550. That's not bad for an NBA Finals game. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Leif, who's winning Game 3 of the NBA Finals tonight?
That's a great question. I honestly I haven't been that thrilled with the playoffs in a while because the Thunder are 67 win team and they blow every lead they have. Like what type of championship close is that? The Pacers are a fun story, but I don't feel like they're as great of a team. So
Yeah.
it's watered down. I've asked for parity for years, but I guess I'm hard to please because for some reason it hasn't been great. So I'll go. I think OKC will win the series. I don't know about this specific game because they'll be happy to be in Indiana. So I'll go. The Thunder take this one. The Pacers take game 4. We're even going back to OKC.
Ooh, I like that a lot. Yeah, I think I saw the Thunder are like 0 and whatever against the spread in the playoffs or something recent, or in maybe the last, I don't know what it is, but yeah, they've been kind of pooping things away. Leaf, I think I said Tuesday, it was actually Monday, ESPN announced that Dick Vitale has not only signed a new contract through the 2028 season, which would be 3 more seasons worth. That's good stuff there. But also, they are creating in his honor the Dick Vitale Invitational. And before we talk about that, Leaf, I know you've got some good Dick Vitale love in your heart. You've got a great Dick Vitale impression. Just what does this mean to you for ESPN to honor Dickie V in this way?
Well, I think it's great, one, because while he was out dealing with health issues for a couple of the past years, you felt like there was a lifeblood of college basketball that was missing.
Yeah.
And a big game wasn't a big game. And like, sure, there are people who'd say, well, we'd rather have Bilis on the call. And you know, they want a more neutral thing. But like the excitement and ambassador, in an ambassador sense that Dickie V brought, it was second to none. Like it's no different for me being young, but like I grew up with Dickie V calling all the big games, and like that's what I associate college basketball with. And I think the crazy part is that's like 50 years of him doing something for ESPN. It may not always have been the same role, but so everyone who's watching college basketball now is tied to Dickie V, and it's not just me. So the fact that he's still going is wonderful, and I will gladly watch any game that Dickie V calls.
Man, that's a good word. Like, I know he's kind of polarizing just because of how he is when he's calling games. Love him or hate him, you cannot deny. I love that you use the word ambassador. He has been the single greatest ambassador for our sport. And it's so cool that another generation is going to get to hear that and see it. And yes, as you said, there's just something that when a game starts and you hear that, that Dickie V aura.
Are you serious, baby?
Thank you. Come on, like, right?
Yeah, I love Dickie V. I did a talent show back, like it was like stupid in middle school, and my friends signed me up, and they're like, do the impression. So is that and Bill Walton and all those ones, and so forever, like my voice is now deeper than it was then, but I still, anytime I hear him, it brings joy to my face. So yeah. I'm excited to see a PTP, a diaper dandy. He's the elevator man. Are you serious, baby? So like, I'll hear that anytime and I'll be happy. I don't care what's happening in the game. Like I can watch the game with my own 2 eyes and he doesn't have to explain anything to me. That itself will bring me happiness. So I think he's wonderful.
And the good news along with all this, Leif, is that one of the things we've begged for is better and more and high profile games on week one, like opening night, yes, but all throughout that week. And we had already bookended it well, right? Like we've got multiple high level games on opening night, Monday, November 3rd. We've got multiple great games that weekend, but in between, there just wasn't much like that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. There are games, but nothing really yet to highlight it. So this Dickie V Invitational is going to be the second night of the season, Tuesday, November 4th. We're going to get Duke and we're going to get Texas in Charlotte. And man, Leif, I love that to happen. Like, let's just have a straight, like, I want to see the entire first week of the season have high level games that we anticipate in a big way, and this is going to allow us to do that again. Man, to see those Boozer twins right out of the gate on night 2 of the season. What do you think about it?
I mean, it's Duke's the biggest brand in basketball right now. Like you're a Carolina guy, but frankly, like Duke's the one who's getting the top guys. They're making Final Fours and doing these things. So the fact that it's Duke and he was nicknamed Dookie V at different times, like it makes sense.
Right.
I would have loved it to be Duke Carolina, or a Champions Classic-esque game. And this is no disrespect to Texas, but they're not the marquee of the marquee right there. Like if that were Duke and UConn or something for the most recent, fair. That would be like the ideal situation. But Texas is by no means a nobody. And so that's a big game. There's going to be athletes on the floor. You're going to see a prominent force in college basketball that year in Cam Boozer, who I think has as good a chance as anyone to win the college basketball player of the year. Like I think he's going to be on a winning team. He's going to have the ball in his hands and he's super polished and look basically like Paolo Banchero. So while Darren Peterson's going to get a ton of love and AJ DeMonza's probably been the one with the most heralded reviews coming into this class, I kind of think he's the most natural fit to college basketball. So it makes sense Duke is the highlighter for Dickie V.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I kind of wish in some ways this was last. I know Texas wasn't a phenomenal team last year, but just to have the pull of Trey Johnson against the Boozer twins in that lineup would be a lot of fun. Leif, that said, like, as we think about Dickie V on the call of those games, I know now typically the A team is Shulman and Bilis. Do you think it could work to have the more just like, yeah, I know Jay is cheeky and has fun and whatever, but like, would Bilis, Shulman, and Vital, would that work together?
They've called games together before, and Bilis always complains that Dickie V calls him Jake or something, or maybe that's Bill Walton. I can't remember.
I think that's Bill Walton.
Yeah, I think it's Bill Walton. He calls him Jake, but same idea. Like you can have a more vivacious personality in Dickie V, and you can have the more serious basketball interpreter and the one who explains the game more in Bilis. And I think it could work. When Corey Alexander did, I don't think Corey Alexander is that great of a color commentator, but he was so appreciative when Dickie V came back and called the Clemson game. And he helped Dickie V out when Dickie V's voice was going, and Dickie V's voice got stronger throughout the season, but he was there. And so I think Bilis is better than Corey Alexander as a broadcaster of the sport we love. So I think it can work. And I think you just got to put Dickie V prominently displayed on our TVs at the beginning of the season and make sure to just cherish kind of the fact that he's been that ambassador for college basketball for so long.
Yeah, I think that trio, you think about CBS's lead team where you've got Raph as kind of the Dickie V of that crew. You got Grant Hill, who would be more the Jay Bilis of that crew, and then Ian Eagle, who would then be like the Shulman of it. And so we've seen it work with that trio, and I think you've kind of got the same three musketeers of it if you did Shulman, Vital, and Bilis. So I would totally be down for that, for some big, like, to get that trio for, as you said earlier, like a Duke Carolina situation. Boy, I think we would all be pleased with that. All right, Leif, on Tuesday, the NCAA announced some big time rule changes intended to speed up reviews, and we've got a little NBA type movement coming at us. I want to ask what you think about these rule changes and if you think it actually is going to speed up games or not. We'll have those conversations coming up here in just a second. On Tuesday, the NCAA Playing Rules Oversight Panel approved some changes that are Leif intended to help with game flow this year. I think it's no secret to anyone that watched college basketball in the past year in particular that, man, things just are really getting bogged down at the end of games by what they're looking at. The thought is that the chief problem is out of bounds calls. Who's it off of? All of that kind of stuff. That's what's really taking so long. And so they're trying to make ways to lessen that. And the way they're doing that, Leif, is we're introducing coaches' challenges. I'll just give the verbiage of it, and then I'll let you give your thoughts on this and if you think it will actually help or not. This is direct from the NCAA press release on it. Changes include a coach's challenge at any point in a game to review out-of-bounds calls, basket interference / goaltending, and whether a secondary defender was in the restricted arc or not. The panel also approved, et cetera, et cetera. Under the coach's challenge rule, teams must have a timeout to request an instant replay review challenge. If the review is successful, teams will be allowed to have one additional video review challenge the rest of the game, including overtime. And if the first video review challenge is unsuccessful, the team loses the ability to challenge for the rest of the game. And then it lists a whole bunch of stuff that the refs still can go look at. It's just that I think the key thing is that officials cannot conduct video review on out-of-bounds calls unless through a coach's challenge. Leif, what are your thoughts on this change?
I mean, I like it. I think that it adds an element to strategy and, more importantly, stops the incessant reviews for the final 2 minutes that take the game forever. I'm so used to it, though, and I love the way college basketball is that it doesn't bug me that much. I know sometimes it's like, oh, why is this game taking 20 minutes when it says 150 on the clock? Great, like whatever, it's basketball. I love watching basketball. So it doesn't bug me that much. I think that is a good thing. I like the element of strategy of, preserving the call for a vital moment. You got to trust your player who says he's going to go do a little finger waggle and say, review that. And the NBA teams are really good at it because they have video guys that their sole job is to watch the review and know the rules of the game. And I think that'll be interesting. I'll be very curious to see the block charge in terms of this, because they've made the block charge. It used to be everything when someone would fall was called a charge. And one of my very good friends was like, I'm going to boycott watching basketball if people just can fall over and you're awarded for falling over. And so since then, they've made it so the block charge is less of an issue. I'll be curious to see how often that's overturned because it's such a judgment thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And as for when they're talking about the quarters, I know that's not part of what you said, but this has been on my head for a while. Everyone wants quarters, but why? The half is fun. You got to play well for a full half, and it makes it different. Like, it's not the NBA. Make there be differences from amateurism to the professional ranks. And yeah, I know women's college basketball plays it. I don't think it's necessarily better or worse. I'm all for the difference. So I think it's kind of lame that they're taking away the differences and making it more and more similar to the professional game, as they already allow free agency and all these things. So I'm anti-switching that. Maybe I'm just a traditionalist. But what's wrong? Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, what's wrong with halves?
Yep. Yeah. Interestingly, I'm with you there. I think there are some things that are broke that should be fixed, and that ain't one of them to me. I say keep the halves. I know they're saying that hasn't happened yet, and they're looking into it, but I want to keep that. Leif, curious to see is, as coaches start using these challenges, what types of calls we see them used for. As you said, with block charge, it is such a judgment call that there is, like, you can't trust the definitive video replay on it, whereas you could with an out of bounds call and who it's out on. So I'm imagining that the vast majority of challenged calls will be out of bounds plays. What's your thought? What's your guess on that?
Well, in watching a ton of NBA games, a lot of them are, can I retain possession or add a projected point total? So what I mean by that is, if someone gets fouled and you think it was not called a foul, and it's going to be 2 points or 0 points because it's not a foul, and then you get the imminent possession, I think it's going to be used to take away points in the sense of, instead of sending a player to the free throw line, we preserve a foul and get the possession. Or it'll be out of bounds because that's the most clear cut. Yeah. It touched the line. It didn't touch the line.
Right.
So I agree. I think those are the two most likely things. I think block charge is going to be the most fascinating to see if it is challenged, but I don't think that'll be
good use of. Yeah. I don't think that's a wise use of your one challenge, because if it's wrong, if you don't get the call, right, it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. It's do they interpret it? Was there video? Because if we get a, hey, you might have been right, but we don't have enough video evidence to overturn it, so the call stands, then you're out. And Leif, I think that brings me to the next point of this is, do you like that it's like the most challenges you can have is 2, right? Like, I think there are some people that would say, well, why, if I keep winning my challenges, why can't I have an infinite number? Whereas, like, literally, if I win my challenge, the most I can get is 1 other. Do you like that, or do you like make it take it, if you'll allow me to call it that?
No, I like the strategy involved with like weighing it, because otherwise you say, okay, that's a foul early in the game, and you stop the game and say, okay, we get 2 free throws, and maybe you do that, but I like the strategy involved of only having a maximum of 2. You got to get it right to get the second one.
Yeah.
I think the NBA did well when doing that themselves. I like that. You mentioned I watch a ton of tennis. I miss the challenge system there, in which it was a kind of a make it take. If you got it, you got to keep your challenge. But if you lost, then you lost your challenges. And so there was a strategy of, you don't want to just put your hand up and say challenge each time. So I think I'm very aware of the benefits of asking for challenges, because once those went away, you could see, oh my God, they missed a call, and now this guy's out of challenges because he was doing it wishfully early. So I do think for basketball there'd be too many stoppages if you were able to go make it take it. So I do like the strategy involved of it, but I'll be curious to see what happens the first time someone's used their challenge early, they don't have another one, and then there's a bad call, and how frequently they're like, oh, this stinks because otherwise we could have reviewed this.
Yep. Because there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do now.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of complainers about that. So we're not going to be able to satisfy all parties. And like I said, I loved watching college basketball as it was. I didn't mind the reviews. I mean, sure, sometimes it takes a while, but I'm sat for the game anyway. I don't care. Yeah. So I kind of like the fact that they were getting the calls right, even if they went to the monitor, allowed for teams to execute well. So I'm in the minority here. Everyone else is saying, thank goodness it's happening, these challenges. I don't really care for it that much, but I do think it'll add an element to strategy, and I like strategy typically.
So if it's getting the call right versus keep the game flow going, you would prefer get the call right.
Yeah, to a degree. Yep. I think it gets a little crazy, but I would rather get the call right than have, like, if you blow a bad challenge early in the beginning of the game, and then it's at the end of the game, then the thing will be like, oh, he shouldn't have challenged, where it used to be, oh, you know what, like, let's get the call right. And the good thing about this is you can challenge fouls as opposed to just out of bounds, whereas you couldn't do that. So I do think that's good. But at the end of a game, if it's 5 seconds left, it's a 1-point ball game, and someone's inbounding and the ball gets knocked out of bounds in a press break, and you can't say, you know what, let's see whose ball it is, and you lose that game in March Madness, people are going to be pissed.
Yep.
And whereas
because officials cannot initiate it in that, like, like, I feel like literally every out of bounds call, even if coaches weren't asking for it, official makes the call and immediately makes a sign themselves. Like, that will not happen.
Yeah, it can't happen. And so we're gonna have a late game in March Madness that's going to have this happen, and someone's team is going to be really good, and they're going to lose because they challenged too early. And they're going to say, oh, I hate this rule, even though it made basketball 20 minutes quicker in a few games that take a while. So honestly, I didn't care too much for the rule change. I do think it's fun. It adds an element to strategy. But I'm not someone who needs to be impatient and goes through and needs the game to be made faster. Like, I like the drama that's added to it. So.
And Leif, I'm a person who I have a sense of justice. And so that plays out here too. I'm like, I get the call right. I want to know, and so I'm like, figure it out and do it. Now, there are several things that officials can still initiate video reviews on. It's just that out of bounds calls are not one of them. We're not going to go through all the rest of the rules. There's several other things, like JT Toppin probably wouldn't have gotten kicked out of that game last year, because now groin kicks, you have the
that was
refs
insane.
Do what?
That was insane.
Yeah. So now refs will be able to have the ability to adjudicate intent there and bump it back down to a flagrant 1 if desired. Leif, the one other one, though, that I do want to ask you about, I think is the other biggest change, is now we're going to continuation. That's another place where NCAA is going to be like the NBA a little bit more. Beforehand, the college rule on that has been completely different than the NBA rule, where it's like got on the ground, right? And there were those calls, but now you get that continuation rule. Leif, earlier you said you like the separation of college and NBA, so I would guess you don't like this change. Is my guess.
Yep, I'm consistent. I think they're trying to make the leagues too similar, and yeah, sometimes it's fun to see a continuation, but at the NBA level, some of the continuations are ludicrous because it's as soon as you gather, so you can gather and take another full step, and it's still a
like
continuation.
Giannis's street or Wemby, with those long limbs.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are such phenomenal athletes. It makes everything so close to the rim that you can be fouled 30 feet away and you shoot a 15-foot jump shot. It's a continuation. I'm being slightly hyperbolic, but like that has happened before. And so I mean, imagine the end of a game when you're trying to foul up 3 now. And you're trying to foul, and someone can say,
Well,
"Oh, I was gathering," and you challenge, and by the letter of the law, that the gather is truthful, that they're trying to load into a shot instead of just heaving it up after you wrap them up. So I think there's going to be some gimmicky stuff, and the NBA does have it. The NBA has the best players in the world, and I'm fine with it because you need some elements of difference. Yep. But for college, I think they're changing too much, and I like the element of amateurism that used to be in college basketball.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if we're going to get some SGA level foul merchants or some James Harden foul merchants in college basketball. And honestly, a lot of this is going to be on the refs and how they adjudicate that and who falls for it, right? Like all of that kind of stuff. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that all comes together, Leif. And truthfully, we're not going to know until we see the season start on November 3rd with Duke and Texas on November 4th with the inaugural Dickie V Invitational. Lots of fun stuff coming. All right, guys, don't forget, as we said earlier, NBA draft is 2 weeks from today. Very curious to see. Should be a lot more college basketball players right at the top of things than we've had in recent years. So that's fun for us. For Leif Thulin, I'm Isaac Shade. Thanks so much for joining us on today's show. If you've not subscribed to Locked On College Basketball on video and audio, make sure you do that right now so you don't miss a second of the show. If you've not joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, that link is in the show notes. We'd love to see you in there. It's absolutely free to join. As always, I want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats. Wild Popes, excuse me. Shouts to our guy Mick Bruins. And until tomorrow, peace.